Hi, everybody. Welcome to Dr. Cami and Karen Go Keto, where Cami and I are going on a keto lifestyle transition. We're on our way. We've had a couple of bumps and stops, but we are continuing with this low carb diet, ketogenic lifestyle, and I'm trying to do carnivore on occasion. And today we have with us Pam Devine, who is a co-founder of Low Carb USA that you've heard Cami and I talk about a lot on the channel. So we're really excited to have her here, and I'll turn it over to Cami, see if she has anything to say, and then Pam.
Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. Welcome. We're so excited to be here with Pam, and I was able to meet Pam, I think at the same time as Karen, right? Last August in San Diego at the Symposium for Metabolic Health, which is put on by Low Carb USA, of which Pam is the co-founder with Doug Reynolds. And it was so wonderful to meet her. She's so exciting. She's so energetic. She's a lot of, Doug is more up on stage and she tends to be more behind the scenes, like running the show, like making sure that everything goes off without a hitch. And they make a great team. And so we're just so happy to have you here and see kind of what's going to come up and what we're going to talk about today.
So much for having me and that great introduction. I really appreciate being here.
So I kind of was thinking that what we could do initially was just start out a little bit with your journey and kind of how things came to be for Low Carb USA, and just kind of take it from there as we're kind of in, on our little journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So we would have to go all the way back to 2015 if we're going to start with our transition into reducing carbs in our diet and looking at other lifestyle changes that we might be doing, but even before that, Doug, and I thought we were focusing on healthy diets and healthy nutrition. And Doug's got a long history in running, and long distance running. But he had a lot of carb loading days, There was a lot of Coca-Cola products on his race circuits. They actually had them at the races as their drink, where now they might be trying to have an electrolyte source or, things like that, and a healthy snack for a carb burner, right? And we were promoting sports nutrition. We were working and doing in our spare time outside of, Doug's a software engineer, and I had been doing some work with him, and we signed up to do some health and wellness expos at corporations where we would have a table at expos at people's workplaces at lunch, and we would talk about nutrition. And what we were talking about, eat less, move more, eat, a wide range of whole grains and beans and all that kind of stuff. And obviously we would talk about, cutting out junk food as often as you could, and using these healthier products to carb load for your exercise because you needed them to build muscle, which is what we had been taught. And along the way, we found Tim Noakes, but not until we were a few months into hearing about the ketogenic diet from friends of ours that had worked in the nutrition space with us for a few years, over the few years before that. They had sent us an email. Doug will tell the story that he got an email from a friend that said ketones, an alternative source of fuel than glucose. And he was like, what is this? I've never heard of any such a thing. And we actually found Steve Finney and Jeff Volek. And you got to hear from Steve Finney at the Symposium Metabolic Health. He's been at our conferences every year since our inception in 2016 for the conferences in San Diego.
They're the founders of Virta Health, right?
Yeah, well, Sami Inkinen is the founder of Virta Health. He played a part in our journey, in our beginning of our journey as well. And Steve Finney has always been the chief medical officer of that. He stepped down in the last year, I think. And
yeah,
he transitioned over to a new chief medical officer. But Jeff and Steve had been doing research for many years. Steve Finney's coined the term nutritional ketosis. So I always refer to him as the godfather of ketosis and ketogenic diets, because he wanted to find a term for what they measured in the blood for ketone levels, and not just, you know, exogenous ketones that people can make as a nutritional supplement, but how is your body's liver producing ketones from fatty acids that it's consuming, and how is that measured? So Steve and Jeff wrote a book called The Art and Science of Low Carb Living. It's a fantastic book. And Doug found that early on in some of their articles. And he spent a few weeks researching, and I said, "Are you still reading about that ketogenic diet?" And he said, "It's fascinating." I am. And I'm like, he was spending hours and hours, you guys. And I was like, "You're really still reading about this?" And he's like, "Yeah, it's so interesting." And that's where this Sammy Inking comes in, because there was a movie called The Serial Killers, Cereal, the movie. And the first one didn't have Sammy in it, but the second one did. But the first one originally got my attention. Like, I wasn't reading the articles that Doug was reading, really. He was telling me a little bit about it. But when it was up on a screen and there was a start to finish of, I think it's Donald Collins' journey of when he was first introduced to the ketogenic diet. What did he have to do to transition to it? So it showed him grocery shopping like we've all done. So we go to the grocery store and we get a list of things that we should and shouldn't have. And he tests them cooking, and then he tests how he feels, and he goes through that. And they interviewed Stephanie and quite a few other people in the science and research and clinical aspect of the diet. And that really grabbed my attention because I was seeing it. I was hearing from somebody, and I was like, "Oh, this is really interesting." So when Doug pulled the trigger and said, "We're going grocery shopping," and I have a list, and I'm going to actually ruin his when you interview him, because it was me. You want to go to the grocery store and you have a list? And we got all the things that, if you're looking at starting a low carb diet or reducing carbohydrates, you're going to cut out all that stuff. And I was like, well, what are we doing? Like, and I had that weird reaction where I said, where am I going to get all my nutrients from if I'm not eating fortified bread? Silliest thing. But like, for some reason, we have all believed that idea that we need to get vitamins from fortified products instead of from our food sources. Right?
Yeah,
Right.
it tells you something when you think that it has to be put back into food, because I started in like 2012 with the Paleo Ancestral Health Symposium. And, you know, it's just when you eat ancestrally, you know, people, I mean, ancient people were not taking nutrients out and then putting them in, or taking nothing and putting nutrients in because it wasn't convenient. You
They
know,
didn't have made supplements to buy off of a shelf somewhere.
yeah.
Well, and you take the food and you take the, you know, you process it. So it's nice and it's okay the way it is, but then you process it and mash it and shorten the chains, and then you have to fortify it to make it something that's decent to eat again. Whereas if you really just start with the whole food, you're okay with that.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, you take the peel off of it, you take the husk off of it, you take the other pieces of it out, and then it's not the same thing anymore. But we've also learned that we may not need like grains in our diet, right?
Yeah.
So that was really confusing, obviously. And oatmeal, like I had this vision of when I ate oatmeal, it was sucking the cholesterol out of my bloodstream, and it was reducing my heart cardiovascular disease risk. Like that.
And, you know, Pam, that's funny because oatmeal was one of my toughest ones to give up, because it was brown sugar, pats of butter, a little cream, some craisins on top, maybe some nuts, and a big bowl of oatmeal. So it was really just a liquid cookie.
Oh, that was exactly me.
But mine
That
was
exactly
steel
what I
cut,
was eating
right?
in the morning, with low-fat yogurt that had fruit on the bottom. And it was usually, I had already maybe started thinking I should probably get the one that has less sugar. But it was low-fat. And I was eating a banana probably with it. And there was a time where I was like, I should probably add a little more protein to this. And I was probably started doing the steel cut oats because those were better. And I have a protein bar because I was thinking we were very active at the time. We were doing martial arts 3 days a week, running, volunteering at our running clubs. That was our other part of our sports nutrition recommendations. We got really involved with our running club, volunteering with them.
So you were not really coming from this from an aspect of losing weight.
I wasn't coming from an aspect of being sick, but we were putting on weight that we hadn't carried, and we were the most active people at that time. We had transitioned to a different corporate startup job by the time we were starting to do low carb. And we were stress eating. We were eating food that was in the office. We were commuting long distances in between our workouts and our work day and sitting long hours at a desk. And we were slowly putting on weight, and we were really confused. Like, I was not fitting into the pants that I had started the job in. And I was asking my family to buy me stretchy pants because they would be more comfortable while I was sitting at my desk. And I was like, what is going on here? Like, the other people in our office are not running after work, and they're not getting in their car and driving to a 45-minute martial arts class, or sometimes we'd go to the 90-minute class because we wanted to work out more. But, when we got home, we were doing the snacks, and we were making protein shakes, and we were drinking a carb-loaded drink with it. So that was not helping us sustain any type of weight. We were putting it on slowly.
Yeah.
And Doug was not always really good about let's eat healthy. I was trying. I was getting confused about what I was eating, though, because I was like, why am I putting on weight if I'm eating lean protein and trying to get vegetables and eat salads? And, I'd still have these snacks and stuff after our workouts and in between. Like, I was saying, I always had a sweet tooth. So afternoons were like, I know I shouldn't have the cookie that they snuck into my lunch bag. And I've asked them many times, don't give me the cookie. And they would still put it in there. I'm like, okay, it's not this cookie. But then I'd want to go for the candy bar in the vending machine because I was like slumping in my chair. It was 3:30 in the afternoon. And I was dying because my brain was stopping. I was getting low blood sugar. I would do that in the mornings too when we go back to that oatmeal. So oatmeal with all the stuff in it and sugars, and then we'd go to Starbucks and I'd get the skinny mocha. Well, skinny mochas just have low fat, no fat, and a bunch of sugar in it still. So by 10 a.m., I was like, I have to go to the deli and get breakfast. It's like, you just had breakfast. I'm like, I feel terrible. I have a headache. I'm shaking. I have to go get some, at that time, I usually say, I need to go get some hard-boiled eggs. So my body was telling me, you need fat and you need protein. But I wasn't understanding the part about I didn't need all that sugar in the morning. I didn't need to start. So when I started learning that, you guys, food freedom, like low blood sugar freedom, I was like, wow, this is like what I've been looking for to get off the roller coaster of I feel hungry, I feel terrible, I'm starving, and then eating too many sugar products and carby products, and then feeling terrible and having to eat again, all the times, 5 times a day.
Yeah.
So, then we started trying to tell people about it, and we really wanted to get more information so that we had more validation about it. And when Doug says, I think I'm going to tell my mom we're doing this. So his mom's in South Africa still at the time. And we used to call her every Sunday. And she says, Mom, I'm doing this diet and this is what we're doing. We're cutting out carbohydrates and we're focusing on protein and vegetables. And can I get that recipe for this thing? And she's like, oh yeah. And then she goes, that sounds like the Tim Noakes diet. And Doug's like, wait a minute. What? His running idol, the idol that taught him how to run marathons and how to carb load and do all this stuff. He started looking it up on the internet as we were on the phone. And he's like, Tim Noakes is doing a low carb diet. And he found the video of him saying, I'm so sorry. I'm ripping the pages out of my book called The Lure of Running, which Doug had copies of and gave copies of, and they all shared it. and saying I was wrong with all the talk about carb loading. And Tim Noakes, I don't know if anybody listening or you guys know this, he was part of the creators of these carb loading products. Like there was something called that had his initials in it, and it was like a jet, those gels that people had on the running circuit. And Tim's like, I was wrong. I didn't know this was leading people down the road to diabetes. My dad had type 2 diabetes, and then I got type 2 diabetes, and I've been running and eating healthy, and I didn't understand it till he started looking at it. So when we found looking up Tim Noakes, we found that he had done a conference in South Africa, and there was all these other speakers and we found Steve Finney had presented there and a few other people, and we found Low Carb Down Under as well. And saw that there were these conferences. Doug had decided he wanted to be a coach because, like I said, we were always talking about sports nutrition, and we knew all these people who were having trouble running with extra weight and hadn't been able to, they're running literally 100 miles a week and they're still heavy. So there's got to be something wrong with this move more and eat less thing, right?
I always thought it was my thyroid. I was always like, check my thyroid.
It has to be my thyroid. Not my pancreas or the fact that my muscles are ignoring my insulin response, knocking on the door.
Not my insulin level.
Not your insulin is level getting really high because nobody's listening to it anymore. I always think of it as like that mom. The insulin's knocking on the door and everybody's ignoring it. It's like... But anyway, that's when we decided got inspired by Tim Noakes, Low Carb Down Under, and the conferences that they'd all done to decide to put on a conference here. Doug wanted to be a coach, and he didn't get accepted into the coaching program that he applied for. So, and then I remember writing to this organization, and we found out that they weren't ready to take international people, but they were in South Africa, and they had been part of making that movie, and Tim Noakes had done some work with them. And I remember saying, I must have put it out in the universe, because I said, if he doesn't get into the coaching program, we maybe will just put on a conference and invite all the experts to our area to present this information, because people aren't getting it. And maybe we had done a bit of seminars, one conference over the years in that corporate job. And so we kind of knew a little bit of the planning, supporting people to register and, that kind of stuff. So it wasn't completely foreign, but we didn't know anybody in the space. So we just...
So how was that first Low Carb USA that you put on?
Amazing. It was really stressful because we're still paying for it. This is all labor of love, you guys. We didn't go in it like with a business plan or anything and go, oh yeah, we have all this funding. We had no idea what we were doing. But Doug's like, did you find a hotel? And I'm like, it was like $75,000. You know that, right? It's like, but anyway, he started writing to people right away when we kind of started talking about it. And 10 people said they'd come and speak. And he's like, ooh. And we got 350 people to come, and everybody that had and many of them had worked together before, so they were super excited to see each other. But then there were a few people who came, met each other and told us their stories, and that inspired us to continue and think about doing another one. Well, that and the fact that everybody said, when's the next one? And we'll pay for it now if it's as good as this one is. Which we weren't expecting.
I consider Low Carb USA to be like the place where the medical community with the belief in low carb, or shouldn't say the belief, the wanting to change the standard of practice. To me, that's where you go if you want to find the conversation. Did that start right away, or?
It didn't actually. But our first idea was to just reach anybody, and mostly the individual who didn't understand this. But at that conference, it quickly became really apparent to me after hearing the story. So one, I heard from a patient. Well, I heard from many patients, but especially a couple patients stand out for me at that conference that Carol, she had been in a really serious car accident. She had crush injuries to her leg. She had a head injury. She had symptoms months later that her healthcare team wasn't able to help her with. And they, just anybody who's ever been in the situation where their doctor's like, I don't know what to do to help you. She had fever. She had all kinds of weird things that turns out was the crush injury syndrome. And she had headaches, and she had a lot of neurological symptoms. So Carol decides, if I have neurological symptoms, and I think I've heard that the ketogenic diet is good for epilepsy, maybe if I try this for my symptoms, I might find relief. And she found relief immediately. She started losing weight that she was having trouble losing, that she'd put on before her accident, and especially after. She was super depressed because she was disabled. She wasn't able to work. She was in pain all the time. Her healthcare team hadn't been able to help her. And then she found relief from finding it on the internet. So we thought, well, we need to reach more physicians, obviously, right? But then when we started hearing the stories from physicians, how this changed their lives and changed their practice, where they were feeling like they could help people more now, we were like, we really need to make sure that we're reaching the healthcare professional. And we had been in communication with some of the speakers, and Jeff Gerber was one of them, who had done some conferences in Colorado, and he helped us get the CMEs in place. I think we'd already done it for that session, for that first one, but it became really apparent that we had to continue to do that, and that was our big market. And the more we did, it's hard to believe we just did our 20th conference last Florida event. A couple of them were in partnership. One was a 1-day and one was a 2-day. But other than that, this will be our 9th San Diego coming up. We just finished our 8th Florida, so that's 17 right there. We wanted to make sure that we always had CMEs and that our target audience was the healthcare professional. And so once you apply for the CMEs and you get accreditation for them, they have to be at a certain level, and they have to pass that criteria to meet the accreditation for CME. So
I just wanted to mention to the people that might not know that CME stands for Continuing Medical Education. And those are credits that the doctors get when they go to these conferences. And every year we have to have at least 25 credits of CMU to maintain our license. So it really is important, and it motivates the doctors to get there to learn. And there's so many doctors coming and learning, but there's so many that still say eat less, exercise more, the vast majority. So it's just exciting that you were on the bottom floor of all of this education.
It actually is. And, sometimes we look at it and think, gosh, we have a lot of work to do, because we have to reach so many more physicians, nurse practitioners, PAs, dietitians especially, but also the specialties. Our endocrinologists are the ones that don't understand this, or understand this the least, or in the most place to be skeptical, and I'm not really sure what the environment is where the endocrinologist isn't understanding. You would think they would be the first ones to understand this, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, I would like to point out, Pam, this is just my own personal experience. I really enjoy going to your conference and not having to choose between different tracks. You know how you go to some conferences and it's like, oh, we've got this track for these people. I hate thinking I'm missing out on something. So I really enjoy that aspect of Low Carb USA, or Symposium for Metabolic Health.
Yeah, and Doug will appreciate hearing that, because he's actually been extremely mindful of doing it that way. And we'll hear some suggestions that say, can you have this and that? And we really don't want to have people have to choose and miss out on something, choose to do one thing versus the other. We have put breakout sessions in the lunch break, and
right.
I mean, you can go all day,
with
no breaks, because then you've got these ones that you don't want to miss and you want to go to. Or we did multiple ones where you would choose from those, but we try not to do that. And there have been people who wanted to plan it in other areas or talk about planning it different ways, and we would prefer to keep everybody in one room, and we would prefer to keep it where you don't have to miss something. And if something's a little higher level and you're not a physician, you can attend the conference, and maybe there's a talk that's like, oh, this is really hard for me to understand. I'm going to go take a break. I'm going to go for a walk. But they are for everybody.
Right. And there'll be somebody in there that maybe doesn't understand it either, but you guys have been in the same room and you can talk together. I really enjoyed it because of the connection that you have. And you really do feel connected to every single person that's in that conference. And so as you walk around during the breaks and stuff, you know that that person's heard everything that you heard. You know, so you can ask them, hey, what's your take on this? Or what's your take on that? And I really enjoy how the speakers were so open to just meeting everybody, talking, answering questions. The panel with the questions was some of the best parts. You know, it's really an enjoyable conference.
That's one of our favorite parts of it too. And we actually try to understand what makes it, what makes everybody so open and giving with their time and energy, and the passion behind discussing the ins and outs and the benefits, and helping anybody who's learning or is new to the conversation or didn't understand a certain aspect of it, and just have a discussion. And everybody's really there to teach each other and learn from each other. Even the speakers ask questions. They ask questions of other people, other speakers. They ask questions of patients or lay people that are there. You know, what would make this better for you or easier for you? Or what is it that you didn't understand that I could teach better? Or all these different aspects of discussion. They're great. Thanks for pointing that out.
Plus, it's in San Diego. And Karen and I ate steak and lobster every night, but this year we're signing up for the dinners, which are going to be even better.
They're really good, you guys. And there is a steak option. You have to pay a little bit more for it, but they'll serve you up a nice ribeye. And it goes along with the buffet. And there's fish option. There's always usually a beef or pork option, a fish option, and sometimes a chicken option. But so there's 3 entrees. There's a big salad, a bit of a salad bar. I shouldn't say whole, because he'll do a little bit of a themed salad. And a themed dinner, so or buffet. So I like to call one night it's like the Mexican fiesta. So it'll be a little bit of a San Diego Mexican twist. So like a pulled pork and lime Veracruz fish or something like that. And then another night is like comfort food, where he actually does, like our chef, he's amazing. He learned so much from us over the years, and he listened to why we shouldn't have these ingredients and why we should put these ones in. He's amazing. He's done such a good job. 7 of these. But comfort food one, like he did a cheeseburger bake. So it was literally ground beef and cheese and flavorings, and no sugars added to his spices, and no sugars added to the dressings. And he'll do like a cauliflower Mexican rice on the Mexican night, and a whole bunch of different kinds of vegetables that are the non-starchy, low glycemic vegetables. So there's like a squash medley with cheese. It's like zucchini and summer squash. A different flavored cauliflower rice, and he did a kohlrabi. Does everybody know what kohlrabi is? It's like it's a low glycemic root vegetable that he made fries out of. He cooks them in ghee, so they use really good fats as well. They don't put any soybean oil or no peanut oil or any of those either.
Wow.
Well, we're looking forward to August for the next one.
We are too.
Yeah, so we should tell the folks, I mean, just in passing right now, that it's August 15th, right? 15, 16, 17, 18?
Yes, it's a 4-day conference, mid-August. And this year, so the last few years, we've decided to do a special focus. So we're always going to talk about different areas of metabolic health. We're always going to include a talk on cardiovascular health, because everybody says, if you're going to go to this low carb ketogenic diet, we're going to therapeutically reduce our carbohydrates, but we're going to add fat. What's that going to do to my heart health? So we're always going to have a cardiologist talking about heart health and how much your inflammation markers are lowering, how much your diabetes markers are lowering, how much they're not seeing heart disease ramp up. And some of the studies that are out there, ongoing or recent studies, or analyzing past studies about maybe the ones that were telling you that total cholesterol is bad, and this is why. Let's look at the other kinds of lipids, and this is why. Let's look at inflammation and high blood sugars and high insulin levels, and this is why. So we're always going to talk about that. We're always going to talk about overall weight loss and insulin resistance, which we just touched on a little while ago, hyperinsulinemia. But this year we have a really big focus day on a Thursday for mental health, which is a rapidly growing area of research. So we're going to bring in the experts to talk about that on Thursday. And they're going to talk about, maybe it's because we're reducing the inflammation that's helping the brain function better. If medications are addressing these kind of neurotransmitters, which is what psychiatric medications are doing, what is the ketogenic diet and therapeutically reducing carbohydrates doing? It's a fantastic book out. I don't have it right here behind me because it's in where I was reading it last. So Georgia Eade, she's our keynote speaker. And the Change Your Diet, Change Your Mind. There it is.
Mm-hmm. I've got mine right on hand.
It's fantastic. I was so blessed to be able to receive an advanced copy from her. And it's a fascinating subject to read. Sometimes these psychiatric medicines only target one neurotransmitter or two neurotransmitters, but they're showing that the therapeutically reducing your carbohydrates and getting into ketosis is actually really addressing all the neurotransmitters and the inflammation at the same time.
Without
what have you found, Cammie?
Side effects. Without the side effects that the medications have.
So they're reducing your insulin resistance instead of making it worse.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And without the expense, doing it in a more natural way. It's not the pharmaceutical company's choice.
Which is why we probably get some pushback, and who's probably behind why is the keto diet not safe and messaging, unfortunately. But I love the explanations in her book and others and who are talking in the space about GABA and reducing the neurotransmitters that make a lot of noise and then ramping up the ones that make you calm. The glutamine and that make you feel, or is it, I'm hopefully not saying it backwards. I think I said it the right way, but
no, that's
the ones
right.
that make you feel calm.
Yeah.
And be able to sleep and think straight and reduce the anxiety. But even if it's just a low key depression, or it could just be depression, severe depression. I think the statistics on disability from depression alone are super high. Mm-hmm. So if this can ramp up that feel good serotonin, dopamine, and regulate it and help somebody's quality of life just by eating differently, what an amazing thing.
Yeah.
And go ahead, Cammie.
Go ahead, Karen.
You go.
I was just going to say the other thing that is a big one is bipolar too. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of discussion at the conference about bipolar too.
So, and I was just Brescher is also helping us on the committee for planning. He's now working at Metabolic Mind with the Bazooki Foundation, and I think he's going to ask Matt Bazooki, no promises, whether he can come and tell his story. Hannah Sutter is working with him as well. I think she's going to be there. She also has a history of bipolar and reduction in her symptoms and amazing quality of life changes. We met a beautiful young lady in Denver. We were just at, her name's Robin. I want to say Dobbins. super sweet. She's going to take metabolic health practitioner courses and pay it forward because she's had incredible results in her bipolar symptoms and was interviewed. So I'm not sure where this is going to go, but along the way of making Dave Feldman's documentary about cholesterol, they've also met a lot of people in the mental health space who or have been interviewed for the movie. So it may be in the same movie. It may be two different movies. I don't think they've decided. But we're, and Doug has the list of people that Brett was going to reach out to within that planning community and see who's going to speak. So we'll have some announcements in the next couple of weeks. Who's going to be also presenting about bipolar, anxiety, depression, and probably schizophrenia, right? Where nobody in their right mind has ever thought that nutritional changes is going to help somebody reduce their voices in their head, and in a way that medications never have been able to.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a miracle that if somebody changes what they eat and changes the neurotransmitters in their brain and reduces inflammation and those pathways of messaging comes across in a more natural way, that they don't have these symptoms anymore.
Well, it's funny you should say it that way, Pam, because I experienced especially when I always first transitioned to low carb, because it's the one thing that makes you go, I don't feel that I'm feeling really depressed, right? I don't feel like there's any dark cloud over me. But then when I transition, I all of a sudden feel light and breezy. And one of the things I do know I don't hear is, or don't get confused with anymore, is, oh, should I go get my chocolate malt? Everybody on the channel knows I have this thing for chocolate malts, right? And so, I will drive, I'll pass the place over and I'll pass it by and not go. And then I think about it. So I turn my car around and I get ready. I go through the drive-through and then I go, no, I'm not going to order it. I get out of the drive-through and then, I could do that 3 or 4 times. And that when I transition into, especially what I realized with the carnivore, with I'm having one steak a day, I don't even think about it. It's like, I don't even remember that I ate chocolate milks or chocolate malts.
That's amazing.
And those are the voices in your head. No, I mean, not quite as far as, schizophrenia, but that's certainly a voice in my head that's telling me one thing and I know something better.
Let's talk about that, because that addiction component of I have to eat this certain thing and being like driven to doing it. How do you deal with that? You guys talk about it a lot. We were talking about it earlier about different resources. You're just losing the craving and the thought about it when you get into ketosis and at a certain level, do you think? Or that satisfaction from the steak is making you not hungry? What do you think that is?
No, I think it is. I don't think it's a hunger issue. I think because I know I could eat 2 full meals and still have that desire for that chocolate malt back in the day. I think it really is probably the neurotransmitters, probably what would you think, the serotonin or the, what's the other? Dopamine. Yeah.
Dopamine,
like a change in that.
Oxytocin.
Yeah.
Norepinephrine, all those guys. Yeah. Everyone on the channel also knows that I still struggle with the addiction portion of it. I'm a big addiction person. I'm struggling with a history of binge eating disorder. And I think for me, like it's been really hard for me to get into ketosis because I don't stay on the low carb diet long enough, and I have metabolic syndrome terribly. My insulin level's 33. I'm very insulin resistant, and it's been decades of abuse to the system. And so it's going to take time for it to come back. And I've been working with Jeff Cotterman, and we check my ketones every 2 weeks, and the highest I've ever gotten is 0.6. And I think he's right. He says when you get into the 1 to 3 zone of your ketones, I think it's going to be a real big difference for me. And I think, Karen, you might get in there a little bit quicker, and then the cravings are gone. It just disappears.
Yeah.
And the hunger.
Yeah. So as you were doing resistance training with Jeff, you're reducing your insulin resistance. Hopefully that's coming along weeks, months down the line, right, Cami?
Right. My insulin level was drawn, I think, mid-September. And so I'm scheduled to draw it again on April 15th. So it's coming up. So we'll see what's happening. I've still been doing some binging in there, but it's been less amount of food and less volume and getting back on track quicker. And so, yeah, I'm just, it'll be interesting to see how it all pans out.
Very good. We look forward to hearing about that. Now, last I saw you, we were at Jeff Carterman's San Diego community meeting, and we were talking about some resources to help with I pointed you to, like Rob Siva's. We've got a free, in the resources section on lowcarbusa.org under resources and free videos, we've got Diabetes Understood. And there's a series of 13 videos with Dr. Robert Sivas, talking about emotional management systems. Cami, I would love to hear some of the feedback that you had when you listened to those. So there's 13 good length videos of him talking about emotional management strategies and what you do when you fall off the wagon to get back on again. What resonated with you?
Right. And I think I didn't watch all of the videos. I think I watched the first main video, because I know the falling off the wagon one I haven't seen yet, and I'm really interested in hearing what he says about that. And just to tell people, when you go to look for it, you go to lowcarbusa.org, and it's up in the tab. It says resources, I think, right, Pam?
Yeah, underneath the menu, news and resources, and then there's videos and free videos.
Right. And then you have to go to Rob Siwas and his diabetes one. So you think you're going to go read about diabetes, but then you do get into all of these other videos and about coping and about emotional management systems. And he talks a lot about trying to work on getting your hormones in shape. And he talks about the endorphin system and how that's so important to acknowledge that and to work on that. And he talks about having this mind cleansing moment where you need to give yourself a moment in between, like wanting the binge and making and going to eat something, where you have this mind cleansing moment where you kind of try to wipe off the slate and start over. Yeah, I took some notes here. It's been a while, but I think what he has to say is really wonderful. And and he also talks about how, when you go through things, you have ups and downs, right? Because we have life coming at us, and life can get really lifey. So, you have ups and downs that come along, and then when you have a sudden unexpected event, that causes a big rush in the system, and you have to try to be able to be equipped so that when the unplanned events come, you can make it through that.
Yeah. And because stress will take over for a high percentage of people, right? And what do you do when you stress? You hear it in the movies, you hear it from your friends, you hear it from your family. Here, you need to eat something, and you need to go and in the movies, it's like it's laughed at and it's funny because they got a tub of ice cream and they ate the whole thing. Well, that's not going to help anybody feel better. Maybe in the moment you get that endorphins, like you're talking about. We're talking about endorphins and dopamine and serotonin rush. But then you crash and you feel terrible and you're kicking yourself because you shouldn't have just eaten that. So you've got guilt and shame and low blood sugar and hunger and all that stuff that goes along with it, and the anxiety, and then you don't feel any better. So what is that mind cleansing slate? Like, clean the slate and mind cleansing do? Do you think about this is going to make me feel bad later? Or do you think, what else could I do instead of going to the fridge?
Yeah, there's different things that you can do to try to combat that. But you know, when you're in that moment, like as an addictive person, I understand that when you're in that moment of, you know, it's going to give me some relief immediately. I don't care about anything else. I don't care that my liver is dying. I don't care that, you know, my life could be cut short because of the poor metabolic health that I'm in. You know, you just want to go for that thing right then and there. And so he talks a lot about doing other things. Like one of the things that he likes to talk about is the creative arts and trying to do things along the way where you get involved in gardening or you get involved in singing or you get, you know, involved with being out in nature and you try to combat it that way. Physical activity. He talks about physical activity, how you go. I just got a massage today and my massage guy, Luis, he's awesome. And I was explaining to him what I eat to get relief and I eat when I'm stressed. And he goes, you know, when I'm mad or when I'm stressed, I just go hike 13 miles, you know. I was just like, God, I keep waiting for that to be like my MO, you know, but
and I wonder if you train your like that to be your first thought. I'm gonna run out the door. I'm stressed. I'm gonna go walk this off because I'm mad, and I'm gonna go and I'm gonna stomp on that dirt trail, and I'm gonna get all the air, wind in my hair, and I'm gonna get sweaty, and then I'm gonna feel better.
That's the way that he described it, was that he needs to get air. He needs to fill his lungs up with air. He needs to get himself. He doesn't want to fill himself with junky food because that doesn't do you any good. He wants to fill himself up with air. And the way that he feels like he does that is he goes out and does a lot of physical activity, which increases your oxygen demand and fills you up with more air.
That's an amazing visual. I love that.
Yeah.
And then you could add to it if you could be like, and I'm going to burn up all this blood sugar as I'm using my muscles, and all that blood sugar, all that air is interacting and it's making me feel better. And it's flowing through my system. And who needs all that junk food that's just going to make me feel bad? This is going to make me feel good, kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And you know, it's coming. It's slow though. It doesn't happen overnight. It has not happened overnight for me. It's been a lot slower than I wanted, because I don't know if people realize, but I don't know if you were there when I got up on stage, when Karen and I got up on stage.
Tell everybody about
Symposium in August. And I said, hey, I'm going to lose, 100 pounds this year. And it's not going to be 100 pounds because I'm busy binging and I'm busy converting fat to muscle. And so, but inches are coming, but the pounds aren't. So, it's been a whole interesting ride, which we're transitioning through on this channel.
That's fantastic. And it's a great example for other people, because not everybody can do it the same way. And everybody has to work through struggles, and more people than not probably have the same things. I thought for sure I was going to be that person who could never leave the thing on the counter or not buy it at the store or not drive in and do it. Like, I was literally the one who went into the grocery store dead tired. I had so much inflammation and pain and depression because I'd been going through medical issues where I had hurt my back at work and had long-lasting back pain that turned into terrible, disabling foot pain. And I was on kind of crazy medications that were not helping my insulin resistance. And I was literally walking to the donut thing saying, I'm not going to eat the donut while I'm shopping, but I have no energy to shop, so I'm going to eat the donut while I'm walking to the next area in the grocery store. And it was gone. I was eating the chocolate Long John and drinking a Starbucks coffee at 5 o'clock at night to get to the grocery store so I could get stuff home for dinner. I mean, I was like, I was saying the same thing. I'm not going to do that. I don't need that. But I did. I felt like I did,
Yeah. Yeah.
You just kind of navigate there and you're like, I shouldn't need this, but I really feel like I do.
And the other two things I just wanted to mention real quick, a couple of other things that Dr. Siwas had talked about was, meditation and spirituality, and giving yourself those moments to be still and quiet, and connection. And he talked about human connection and how important that is. And we've already talked about it on this video that we're doing, and how the world is so disconnected now. Especially the young ones, the young folks. I just got an invitation to my sister's daughter's wedding. And, it doesn't say like the father and mother of the bride wish to give away, it just says, come to our wedding, and I just kind of thought, wow, the parents aren't even involved. Here they created these human beings and they're not even involved in the celebration of coming to be with us.
Interesting. So it's interesting transitions.
At least it wasn't an Instagram or a TikTok invite.
No, but you do have to go online to RSVP.
They do have those websites now, and that's where you do the shopping for the gift and pick your dinner and.
Yeah, it's all online. So, but yeah.
Well, it's interesting because we think that there's a devil in the online. But look what we're doing.
That's
we're
right.
connecting.
I love online.
We're sharing our stories. We're sharing the stories with other people who are going to find it later and get inspired. And there's so much good that comes along with it. That I've met more people online than I could ever meet in person at a conference, or their stories inspire us every day to continue to work and to continue to share stories and what are the questions and the answers that people need to be able to make these transitions like we're talking about now. Most of the time we're on our own though, and you need those tools like Rob was saying. You had just mentioned getting outside, and just, if I'm the busiest, on the days where it helps me just do maybe one meal a day, I usually don't lose weight, and I'll continue to put it on as well. If I don't have some days where I skip lunch and I never eat breakfast anymore, like I'll have a fatty coffee, I'll have some cream in my coffee. But if I eat lunch every day for weeks on end, I'll continue to put on weight again. And especially if I'm working on my computer and I'm not having time to walk. But so my busiest scheduled days and it's easier for me to skip lunches when I'm busy. So what does that say? Helps us schedule your day, walk out the door and go do something if that's easier for you to skip that meal. Don't go shopping when you're hungry, although I don't have that trouble anymore as much because I don't get that hungry. Like, I'm not hungry, starving, I have to eat. Sometimes I'm like, I should probably eat dinner now. It's dinner time, but I'm not really hungry. This is weird. Do you get across it when you come across that? You're like, I'm not hungry yet. Like, does it surprise you?
Karen?
Yes, it does for me. It's I'm very happy when, and what's interesting too is sometimes it'll be I'll feel hungry, and then like an hour and a half later it's like, oh yeah, I was hungry earlier and just didn't eat yet, so it's like, oh, maybe I'm hungry now. And sometimes you put it off, and sometimes you go, wow, it's 8:30, maybe I'll just go to bed early and not eat until tomorrow.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that Rob does, build a bridge. So his bridge is black coffee, or have a drink of water, sparkling water. And when you have that time of when you think you're hungry, but you're not sure, or, I was hungry before, and then you bridged it with a black coffee or sparkling water. And then an hour and a half later, you thought, well, I guess I wasn't really hungry after all.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great idea. Yeah. So, we're at 53 minutes here, but I just wanted to see, it's been so much fun being with you two ladies. And I wanted to see if you would talk a little bit, or if you want to talk at all about the, program that you guys have to become a metabolic practitioner. Yeah. What is the exact term?
Accredited metabolic health practitioner.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to. Through the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners, so the SMHP, or at the smhp.org. So along the way, when we started Low Carb USA conferences, and we met all the different practitioners, and we met a lot of the speakers who are clinicians and talk about clinical interventions and aspects of their clinical care, and they talk about research studies. And we met people over the years. We had Gary Taubes, who most of us know as the journalist who's published all these great books on the case against sugar, good calories, bad calories, and why we get fat, and talking about insulin, and not contradicting, talking about the reasons why the calories in, calories out model, or the eat less, move more thing doesn't work, and talk about insulin resistance and the metabolic pathways of cutting sugar and burning fat as fuel. So he's spoken at all coming up 9 San Diego events. And back in 2017 or 18, he introduced us to a woman who he had met throughout the years. She had gotten connected with Dr. Eric Westman. She actually worked in his office, and she studied nutritional therapy and became a registered dietitian. And Gary and her talked about having a session. It was really to talk about an aspect of a book that he was putting together for practitioners, and it ends up being a case for keto, which is what he called it. But it was a case for therapeutic carbohydrate reduction as an intervention, as a medical intervention. Okay, so him and Adele planned a session at the 2018 conference to collect information from practitioners. Where were they struggling? Were they successful? What were their successes with their patients? Where were their struggles? Where were patients struggling? But where were they struggling with their colleagues, sharing this information? And where were people getting hung up with, what about the fat? What about ketosis? Is it healthy? Those kinds of things. So they started asking questions of the practitioners and then keeping track of all those answers. And Adele actually helped develop the clinical guidelines for therapeutic carbohydrate reduction. She was the writer. She was the collector of data. She had the expert clinicians contributing the research and the things that happened in their clinics and the things that they'd learned over the years. The experts were contributing to it, but she wrote the document, it collated it, and then sent it out for revisions with everybody and took in their notes and all that. So we published the clinical guidelines in 2019 in May. And the original home was on Low Carb USA. In 2020, in January, Trochilation of the Low Carb MD podcast with your friend, Dr. Brian Lenskes. I know you've got to know him over the years because he's local San Diego. They started the Low Carb MD podcast and talk about clinical interventions and all that over the years. Well, Tro really was hoping for and saying, it would be super if we had a society that supported practitioners with carbohydrate reduction and had education process. At the time, he was looking for who it should be. And he said to me, Low Carb USA should probably be the person to help develop the society. You guys are in a position where Doug's really good at implementing programs. He's really good at getting things done. He knows a lot of people in the field. So Doug, a couple months later, said, you know what? I think I would like to do this. In March 2020, we all know what happened in March 2020. COVID hit. Our conferences were getting canceled left and right. We weren't able to socialize. So Doug put his head down and he started a nonprofit. It took him 9 months, and I call it our COVID baby, because starting a non-for-profit, doing all the legalities of starting a non-for-profit and doing all the paperwork, and then putting a board of directors together who had to be US-based, but we wanted an international society, so that board of advisors for the clinical guidelines are international. They're David Unwin in the UK, Gary Fettke in Australia, along with a few other practitioners in Australia and South Africa, Tim Noakes, and many other clinicians from around the world. And started the SMHP and the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners. We launched in December 2020, and we continued our partnership with Tim Noakes's the Noakes Foundation spinoff, which helps raise funds for the Noakes Foundation, the Nutrition Network. who thankfully came to us and said, we're going to start creating courses, because we'd already thought we should create courses from their content from the conferences. And we thought, gosh, that's going to be a lot of work to put together courses and tests and certification. And they came to us and said, we have a team of people who's going to start doing this. So we partnered with them. They put the courses together and they provide all the online education for not only if you do one course, so if you do the advisor's course or the ketogenic, the science of therapeutic carbohydrate reduction, which I have the book right here, go along with this book. And you don't have to buy the textbook. You can just do the course, which actually has a really good sale on right now. And if you come to the conference, you usually get a code at the conference for discounted courses. But you can get Low Carb USA certified by doing that. The advisor's course, nurses or dietitians courses. You just do the one set of courses, get certified Low Carb USA. That's the first step. And then the next step is laid out on the smhb.org/accreditation. And you can do the coursework. There's a there's an education pathway. So the advisors are going to need to do the advisor's course that goes over behavioral support. How do you learn what motivates your client? How do you assess when they struggle with food addiction, or they struggle with measuring, or they struggle with satiety and they're still hungry? Where do you help them in those areas? What is low carb? What is very low carb? What is ketogenic? You go over all different aspects of dietary changes and supporting a client. And then even our physicians like to take that sometimes, and nurse practitioners, physician assistants, because they're not taught that in medical school.
Yeah.
Right? Cami, how many courses did you, besides nutrition courses, when you were getting your...
No. Nutrition was an optional course at lunch. And I believe in a lot of medical schools it still is.
Oh, goodness. And then how much do you really get on assessing your patient for how are they going to make changes? What kind of learner are they? What kind of are they motivated? People just say, oh no, eat less, move more, but they don't tell them how to do that. They don't even tell them what that means. When I move more, I always eat more. I do not move more and eat less. When it was carbohydrate based fueling, and when it was cardio made me starving, running and treadmills and any kind of cardio stuff just made me want to replenish those glucose stores really quickly. Anyway, a lot of that is talked about in the courses as well. But so there's those initial courses, and then there's clinical modules. You'll do 1, 2, and 3 that are real clinically related with prescription, reducing prescription, deprescribing medications. Dr. Lenskis, I just mentioned him, does a really good presentation on reducing medications, because how many times as a doctor do you take people off of medication? It's usually just adding to the list of one medication has a side effect that usually ends up having to be addressed. The insulin resistance and the inflammation isn't getting better, and constipation's happening, and the sleep apnea at night, and not sleeping well, and the pain, and all these things. And there's more and more medications on high blood pressure. So he talks about deprescribing and all kinds of aspects of nutritional lifestyle changes, and go through the coursework and then apply, once you get all that done, in the ethics course of what can't say online, what you should do. Everybody, when they get a medical degree, is going to talk about ethics, but ethics today in the environment is even a little bit different, especially online when you're talking about things. So it goes over that. And then there's an application process for accreditation. There are also, if anyone's listening and has clinical experience already, there's an application process where you can submit your case studies that you have patients that have really good progress. You can talk about the patient successes. You can talk about at least one case where your patient struggled, and it could be food addiction. It could be something else. And that's included in the application process as well. So accreditation, people have found extremely valuable. I have one example out of the 80 people over the years that have gotten accredited fully accredited, but there's so many people that are still in the process of taking the courses that are anticipating getting accredited any day now. That she was able to take her accreditation certificates and talk about the training and bring it to her organization, her hospital system, and say, I really want to start a metabolic health clinic. And this is why.
Wow.
Go ahead, Cammie.
I'm just saying, wow, that's fabulous. It
is fabulous. They were like, oh, you have training in this. Let's have a pilot program for 1 day a week, and then we can see your results. And she has such fantastic results that she's got referrals coming from the general practitioners, from the cardiologists, from the orthopedists who are seeing inflammation reduction, weight reduction, where their patients either needed knee surgery and didn't need it after, or needed knee surgery and it couldn't be done because their weight was super high and the inflammation CRP levels were really high, and they came down and they were able to do the surgery for them, things like that. So there's been a number of people who've been able to bring it to their organization and open up, and even if it's just called a pilot, like I said, once a week. She's now being encouraged to open a full-time metabolic health clinic, and she's going to be having that open soon. Karen Miller, she's in, what state is she in? I forget now, but she's listed here in our practitioner database, Midwest, Kansas or Chicago or something like that. But I've heard many stories like this already. And by the way, Matt Calkins, who just graduated medical school, finished his residency, is on our board, and his wife is on our board of directors, and he's chair of our committee. He's put together a fantastic slide deck for anybody to freely use, and put their name on and bring to their organization that says, this is why we need a metabolic health clinic. This is the amount of people who have metabolic health dysfunction. This is what metabolic disease is, or metabolic syndrome is, how many people are affected by it, how does therapeutic carbohydrate reduction improve it as an intervention. And it has a lot of statistics like that and public health information to bring to a hospital organization to encourage them to let a person open up a metabolic health clinic in their area. Wow. Fantastic work that Matt's done.
I had no idea there was so much going on. It's fabulous. There's really
even more,
exciting.
But we can talk about that another time.
We'll have to do another interview.
Yes. Maybe when you get Doug on, he can tell you more. And anything else that I didn't cover?
No, I'm just so delighted. Thank you so much for being here with us. And
we really appreciate it.
This has been fun. I've learned so much.
Thank you so much for having me and your interest in sharing it with the audience that's going to listen to it later. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and we'll have it posted tomorrow.
And we wanted to see if you would put it on Low Carb USA.
Oh, yeah. We'll have to share it with ours so everybody can hear more about the beginning of our journey. I don't think everybody always knows what that might be, or that they're, we're definitely not just out there to make any money on this. It's a passion project because we know that this can make a difference not only in the patient's lives, but individual lives. But when practitioners tell us that this changed their practice, it's hard to go say this at the very end because people should hear this at the very beginning. But thank you for anybody who stayed till the end. But doctors come to us and tell us every day in their application process, but at our conferences, and they write to us and tell us that learning to look at root cause and root causes of illness and practicing metabolic health interventions has helped them help their patients in a way that they always meant to when they went to medical school. That there were many physicians who not only got sick themselves, Cammie, like you guys are having trouble with insulin resistance and hyperinsulinemia and all the other things that go along with it, putting on weight and not being able to lose it, and food addiction. And wanting to quit their jobs. Like they were like, I'm supposed to be an example to my patients of health, and I'm supposed to be able to give them really good advice that's going to help them be healthy, and it's not helping me. So hot, like they were like feeling like, you know, imposters. They're like, I'm giving advice, it's not even helping myself. All my patients, like the number of patients in my practice who have type 2 diabetes is off the charts. And I never entered, like Dr. Unwin, he said, I had one patient with type 2 diabetes in the 70s. Now I've got 200 patients on my thing alone, and he's in a small town. And trying to figure out why that is. Well, he's finally figured out insulin resistance and food addiction. His wife helps him help his patients, Jen Unwin, with food addiction. So she's another resource, Cammie, that she might have different kind of tips to look at in Jen Unwin's program. Her last name? UNWIN.
Okay.
Jen Unwin.
Okay,
and
great.
Dr. Unwin, he was ready to quit practicing medicine. Dr. James Mukey in Australia said he was going to go do woodworking. He was just couldn't believe how many people in his practice were getting, he's an ophthalmologist, who were losing their eyesight to diabetes, and he was just frustrated. He wasn't helping anybody. So many people have written to us to say, I was really going to quit medicine. And now they're rejuvenated and invigorated, like Dr. Lenska's. Jeff Cotterman, who you were just mentioning, called him and said, Dr. Brian, I've got this carbohydrate reduction. No, Brian called Jeff. Jeff thought he was selling him something. And Brian's like, I've just seen so many changes personally, and I've seen so many changes with my patients. He contacted us 3 months after coming to our conference. And one of the reasons why he went was we were offering continuing medical education credits, and we were a few streets down literally from his office. And he didn't realize all the different aspects that therapeutic carbohydrate reduction were going to help patients. There were all these doctors and research scientists talking about all the different aspects of health benefits that he hadn't even come across yet. And he was seeing worldwide physicians, international physicians who were helping people all over the world. And he thought, well, maybe I can do this because I'm kind of doing it for myself, but I haven't tried it with my patients. And here's research papers. Here's an accreditation process that hasn't been put in place yet when he started, but here's an education process. Here's research. Here's all these conference presentations. I'm going to take these to my patients. He contacted us literally, guys, 3 months after the conference, and he said, can I meet with you and tell you like a little bit about what's happening behind the scenes? I've gotten 11 patients off insulin. That's never in my entire practice happened. So
very exciting.
That just keeps us going. And thank you for letting me highlight those stories because I want more people to hear them.
And with the technology that we have these days, we can actually put it from the end and move it to the beginning. So I'll put it in
I can make a big quote. Put it in writing a little across the top. That's a great idea, Karen.
Thank you so much for being here, Pam. Maybe we can get you back for some other topics or something specific. But
thank you so much, Pam.
I look forward to it. I look forward to seeing you both in August in person.
All right. For sure.
Until then, thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.